In my first video about the prototype tile, I had shown off a tile that could have its color changed without affecting the color of the image. That tile had come from a defunct mod that for whatever reason disappeared, and so I've actually managed to develop one on my own that works the same. Now this tile, of which I've provided in the mod itself, uses an image that is in the base tile template, and so as such it is by the URealms team. You can right click it and change the color tint, and it won't affect the main image or the grave image, and you can customize both the grave image and the front image in the template itself. An additional benefit of the custom tile is it comes with a different collider. With large tiles, you may have noticed that the default URealms tiles will collide when you don't expect them to. This has been changed so that the collider of the custom tile is actually the size of the custom tile. While the URealms tile does allow you to have a floating tile like this on top of another, I think a nice compromise is just to use another part of the tile, most likely a part where there's no artwork anyway. Using this tile, I have managed to convert many of the original URealms tiles. Now I won't be releasing these because I don't have permission to use the artwork yet, as most of the artwork is either off of urealms.com or the wiki, and you of course can't just download the artwork and use it. An example of the tile's advantages is here you have these 4 tiles, which are each separate images and tiles, versus these, which are the same tile, just with different colorings. And if I say had a 5th ageless I wanted to manage in the enemy party, I could just recolor it to something different. Or say there was a friendly ageless within the party, maybe someone summoned a thrall, and then you could have a totally different color for the party's ageless versus the enemy ageless. Now there was one thing I was worried about, and that is performance. The reason why I worried about that is the base URealms tile is pretty simple. It's just a circle and there's nothing fancy about it like the extra texture layers above and below it. And so I did a test. So here you can see I have 300 of the custom tiles in the view, because when they're out of view, Tabletop Simulator is smart enough not to always draw them. And you will see I do drop down to about 40 frames, and I do sometimes experience hitches, like I just did. But this isn't the full story. Now when I first tested the original URealms tiles, I was still getting 60 FPS with 300 tiles within view. But that was with the original URealms tiles, so those were the ones that use states rather than a script. Well, now I have a 300 tiles that use the script, and you'll see I'm getting about the same amount of lag. This is something I plan to look into, as it's probably lag due to the UI that's still technically there, but it's not drawn. And there's also another problem in the script that I'll get to later. I hope to release an update that will fix the performance problems within the next 2 weeks. My current theory, albeit I haven't tested it, is the fact that the UI is still technically there, it's just set not to show itself. That may be what's causing the lag with having so many tiles. It could just be the fact that each tile has a script and maybe Tabletop Simulator can't handle that. Hopefully it's not that, because that does put a bummer on the situations, because I can't fix the fact that the tiles have a script. And regardless of the performance issues, there is another issue with the script that I do need to fix, and that is the fact that every time you load the tile in, it will set the UI XML and the UI assets. And while that doesn't sound like a problem, when you're loading in 100+ tiles, it causes some massive lag. And in fact, with the test tables that have 300 tiles, it can take about 30 seconds to a minute sometimes for the table to load in. And a lot of that is due to the fact the UI assets get reset with each and every single tile that loads one after another. And so it causes a ton of lag. And with that update, I might as well do the one thing I was saying I was going to wait until Season 4 for, and that is to make it so you know what each effect does, like the original tiles. Because right now, with blinded, it doesn't tell me exactly what the effect of blinded is. The main way I plan on doing that is changing the description. So I would recommend not using the description for any of the tiles that use this script. You can safely use the name, as I plan to never touch the name in the script. And the reason why I have to use the description versus something in the UI like a pop-up is because, for whatever reason, the tooltips in the UI are not affected by the scale. And that becomes a problem because when I've tested the tooltip, it'll be as big as the table with basic text. And of course, that's a huge problem. That, and to even have a tooltip, if I were to say hover over it, that requires that the UI element get in the way of the token. And you don't want that, of course. You want to be able to grab the token and drag it around. And so I can't have a UI element get in the way. Now, it would be nice to know what Season 4 effects are like, because we do know that they are different than Season 3. But I will make it so it shouldn't be too hard to update it in the future when the Season 4 effects are finally released. I will upload a separate video on how to create your own custom tile. From this point forward, I'm going to be showing what the template looks like and then explaining it a bit in more detail than I'll go into with the create your own tile. And then I'll also be showing what the models look like in Blender. This is what the tile template looks like in Krita, which is the main way I would recommend making tiles. Here you have the base texture for the tile. This is used on both the front and the back of the tile, so be aware of that. Here you have the grave area for, of course, the grave art. I'd recommend doing it under this layer folder, as anything you do in this folder will get clipped to the valid area. You can see the valid area by enabling this layer. And then, like with the character area, it's the same thing you want to do under this folder here, as anything you do in this area will automatically get clipped. That way it doesn't go into, say, down here into the tile texture or into the grave area. Now, if you want to customize the sides of the tile, they go from the bottom up in each success of one, left to right, and it goes from the bottom of the tile counterclockwise around. If you didn't understand that, I wouldn't worry, because honestly, I would just leave the sides of the tile the default. And then, like the old tile template, I have included URealms.com in it. And also, the base URealms template had a check mark and a portal. I've included those just because they were there. I honestly don't know what usage you'd have for these. Now, unlike the original tile templates, this is double the normal resolution size. So the normal tile templates were 512 pixels by 512 pixels. This base template is 1024 by 1024. You can decrease it down to 512 by 512 and it will still work. I just recommend this because you get more pixels for your character. And this is also why you'll notice that the character area actually has more pixels than the grave area and the tile texture. And the reason for that is because this is going to be the image that's showing most of the time, and it's going to be the most important image. It's going to be the one with the fancy artwork that you either made yourself or you got off the internet. And so of course you want to make sure you have as much pixels to it, that way it looks better, especially when you hold Alt and you zoom in. If you're worried about file size, I wouldn't. The base URealms template had 9 images you would export, each one being about 100 kilobytes normally. And this, when you export the image, you have to make sure you export it as a PNG. A JPEG will not work. As a PNG, I find normally you get either between 200 and 400. And that is if you go with full resolution. Of course, if you have it, it'll take even less room. I use Blender to model the tile. The way it works is you have a circle face up here that renders the character image. You have a circle face down here which renders the grave image, and then you have a cylinder which renders the tile part. And the reason why this gets colored but this doesn't is different materials. So Tabletop Simulator will color the first material, so I've named it colored, but it won't color any materials after that. And so for the images, I've used the colorless material, which is the second one in the file. You can see all of the UVs over here. They are slightly misaligned at times. I'm not the best modeler, and it's hard to get the image to be exactly what matches the UVs. So some parts will get clipped off, but it's only pixels, so I wouldn't worry about it. And then from here, you can also see that from here, it wraps around counterclockwise, and then after we get after 8, it'll then pass around to the next line here, and then the next line up, and then the next line up. Now, if you download the development files, you will notice that there's actually 2 blend files, and the reason for that is there is a separate collision file, and this is to help Tabletop Simulator use less resources. The collision itself is the base model without the extra 2 faces, and then it's also decimated by a bit, that way it uses less triangles. And that's the custom tile. Thank you for watching. There'll be a link in the description to the video that teaches you how to make your own custom tiles.